Johnny was born May 27, 1988. Was the scariest and happiest day of my life. I remember when my water broke, I looked at my husband and I'm like, my water broke, now what? He's coming. And we went to the hospital and I had a C-section. And I had a 9-pound, 3-ounce boy, beautiful, beautiful, healthy boy. Brought him home a couple days later, carried him up the stairs myself. My husband said, I'll carry him. And I said, no, John, I want to carry him up the stairs. So I did. And he was just breastfed for 6 months until he started biting me. So I stopped because that's what I thought I was supposed to do. And he's just a wonderful, wonderful boy, baby. No, let me back up to when he was 2 years old. I remember specifically an incident. We were walking through Aventura Mall with my mother, and I had the cutest outfit on him. Knickers that came down to here with suspenders, and a beautiful hat, and a white shirt, and white shoes. And I wanted to hold his hand, and he said, no, Mommy. He was independent at the age of 2, and he walked ahead of me. And the women and everybody in the stores, and I'm not exaggerating, okay, they were coming out and they're like, oh my goodness, look at that little boy. He was a character from such a young age. And then growing up, and he was a very handsome boy. He looked like his father. He had thick black eyelashes, blue hazel eyes, great personality. He had a great sense of humor. He got that from me. He was a jokester. He also got that from me. He knew how to set up a joke. Went to school, a lot of girlfriends. I shouldn't say a lot of girlfriends. I don't mean it like that. He had a lot of friends. And then his teenage years, he skipped school sometimes, but he was very, very smart. Johnny could have a conversation with a child and a 90-year-old and everybody in between about any topic. He loved to read. He loved to read. He was a wealth of information. In fact, in elementary school, he was on he almost made it to the geography B. He came in second place. Otherwise, he would have won. He was very smart. I read to him a lot when he was a child. He went to work with me when he was a child. I didn't put him in daycare. I took him to work with me, and I had that blessing or privilege of taking him to work. And then, and also Justin, I had them both at work with me. It was great times. Then 9/11 happened, and by that time, I was already divorced with his father. I divorced his father in 1998. So it was just Johnny, Justin, and I. And we lived in this house. 9/11 happened, and we were scared. So I said, Johnny, what can we do? And what we did is we made, I don't know what the terminology is, but we made a run bag. Like, let's say if we came attack here, we had a bag that we could survive with. Of course, we had guns. We've been shooting guns for years in this family. And we had ammunition. We actually bought gas masks, fire starter kits, protein bars, water, and also pellets to clean water. Each one of us had our own bag. And, but thank God nothing happened. But it gave us a sense of security, or that we were in control of ourselves, or that we could survive. Also at that time is when my son Johnny, he was 13, he decided that he was going to join and he wanted to fight the global war on terror. So time went on. Thank God there was no more attacks on America. But when he was 17, the recruiting officers started visiting him at the high school, which I totally disagree with. And I think they target children that don't have fathers in the home. So you have this guy that's in their their Army uniform or their Marine uniform, and nothing looks better than a Marine in dress blues, and glorifying infantry, and telling them that they're going to be respected and all of these other things, again, glorifying infantry, but that's not the reality of it. And it's wrong. No child should be taken at the age of 18 into the war. Their minds aren't even developed. They're still developing. And I'm very angry about that. That needs to be changed right away. So when Johnny told me he was going to do it, I tried everything in my power for him not to do it. The attacks on 9/11 just really affected him, and he wanted to fight. Johnny had his opinions about many things, and if he met somebody on the street that needed something, if they needed a shirt, needed anything, he would give it to him or to them. If somebody needed help, nothing could stop him. He would help that person if there was somebody in distress. He was an amazing, amazing boy. So anyway, when he turned 18, which was 2006, May 27th, he signed up with the United States Marine Corps. And on October 31st, they came here and picked him up at 5:30 in the morning. That morning, I got up at 5 o'clock, and he was already packed and dressed, full head of hair. And they had his cell phone number, and they texted him. They said, "I'm here." So then I walked him out, and he got in the car and he left. And they took him to Parris Island, where he started his transformation into a United States. It was about 30 days, and they encouraged, the United States Marine Corps encourage the Marines to write home. They're a very, core family. And I started receiving letters from Johnny every week, and you could see the transformation or the brainwashing into a United States Marine. From the first letter, to the last letter, it was just like, wow. It was incredible how they can train them. Which again, they spend. Okay, after the boot camp, then he went to School of Infantry. It was 1 year they trained him to be an expert in the application of violence. My son could shoot any weapon. He knew about plastics and explosives and everything, and he had no fear. They did all this in the beginning. But when they're done with them, I don't want to get ahead of myself, there was no training, no untraining. So 1 year from the date when they picked my son up here, he went to Iraq in 2007. It was October or November 2007 to 2008. He was there for 6 months. Marines do a 6-month tour because they're hard chargers. They go in there and they clear the way for the other forces. Johnny called me not several times, like maybe once a month. And during that time when my son was deployed, I never left my house. Of course, I went to work, but I stayed home because I didn't want to miss his call. I didn't want to be out in a restaurant or someplace loud where I would miss my phone, call. And how I dealt with that is I connected with a lot of other mothers in his battalion from 2-8. And we would be on the computers and we would be listening to the news and searching for photographs, or stories and what's going on and just supporting each other. And I also cleaned my floors. I had the cleanest floors for those 6 months because that's how I dealt with my stress. And then, thankfully, Johnny made it home. We lost a few that summer. And it's horrible when you're at homecoming and the boys that aren't coming home and their parents aren't there, of course. And, but it's like, when your son comes off that bus, you're yelling his name. You know, he made it home alive. And Johnny was basically the same boy as when he left. He still had that same beautiful smile, that same sense of humor. It was wonderful. I had my boy in my arms again.
Oh, just
You know,
a week.
yeah, about a week. It's a wonderful time. And yeah, it's a week at first, and then he goes, you know, back to Camp Lejeune, and they do whatever it is they do, and then maybe he came home for about a month. Like I stayed at Camp Lejeune for a week. And, you know, we stayed at a hotel off base, and he was allowed to stay with me. And then, you know, they start their training again. When Johnny got back from Iraq, he never mentioned anything that he saw in Iraq. But when he was in Iraq, he actually called me 1 week before Thanksgiving. And he said, "Mom, I saw my first carnage today." He was a first responder to a car bomb. And he sounded fine in that conversation, but then about a week later I spoke to him, and I know that a human being lose their life or die or body parts. That's not natural. So when Johnny called me that first time and he said to me he was the first responder, he sounded normal, but when I spoke to him a week later, I know he was different at that time, because when you're there and it's happening and your adrenaline's going, it doesn't have time to sink inside you, to get into your soul, into your heart, because you're in survival mode. But now as time passes, it's like, you know, it gets into you and it becomes part of you. And as human beings, we're not meant to kill other people. We're not. It's not in our nature. It's not in our DNA. He still had that light in his eye, but he was, when Johnny came home, he was joyful. He was happy. He was proud. He was proud United States Marine. My mother came up and we went out to lunch in Wilmington, North Carolina, not too far from Jacksonville. Johnny went outside to smoke a cigarette, and he was in his dress blues. And he came back inside and he goes, "Mom," he goes, "there was a lady out there with her 2 daughters." And he goes, "They told me I was a triple threat." And I said, "Yeah?" I said, "Why?" Well, what did they mean? He says, "Well, they said, number 1, you're in dress blues. Number 2, you're a Marine. And number 3, you got really big feet." And we just laughed. He was just so handsome. He was so handsome.